So this video is going to pick up where the last one left off. I'm going to do a tabletop build of this DFI not LAN party industrial PC. There's not a whole lot to do. And so in the last video I already took off the back retaining screw and little bracket piece here for the full-size PCI Express. In this video we're going to install the hard drive, which is over here. We're going to swap the fans and install the RAM, install the mini-PS or the mSATA SSD. So not a whole lot to do, but it's going to take a little bit of time. And I think in the best order to do things, we should remove this hard drive bracket first. And for that, you're going to need a screwdriver with an extension to a Phillips head. First two screws you want to get at are down underneath. And hopefully this can show up on the camera, but there's one right down here, right at the very bottom. Put that aside. And on the opposite side, sort of right down through here, there's one. So we'll take that guy off. And we can take our extension off now. Make it a little easier to work. There's two on the side here, underneath where the lid goes. These are a little bit of a... I don't drop my screwdriver. These are in pretty tight. Careful not to strip them. Now, at this point, you want to be really careful that you don't move the bracket around too much because it's still attached to the PCI Express riser. I think you should be able to just pull this out with the riser. Yep. So you can remove the riser if you want. You can just do these two screws on either side. But I think it's probably easiest just to leave that on. And so underneath, we have the rest of the PSU wiring. And I don't know if you can see down in there, but that's a lot of wires for this little tiny PSU. And we have 4-pin ATX, another Molex, and 2 SATA. So there's quite a lot of connectors here for this little tiny case, but they've done a pretty good job of managing the wires and keeping them out of the way. But we are going to replace the fans while we're in here. And in order to do that, we need to unplug our fans. This is the system fan right here at the rear, and the CPU fan is here at the front. So just give that a good tug, and same with the CPU fan. Careful with the wires, they're kind of wrapped around everything. Alright, so here's our CPU fan wire. This thing is really long. And again, we need our Phillips head. And it's just 4 screws on the side here. Now this is exhausting, so when you put your new fan in, make sure it's also exhausting. And the reason for that is that the PSU fan exhausts, and this fan exhausts, so you kind of have airflow being drawn in from these vent holes on the side, across the CPU, and out the back and the side. It's not exactly the most efficient system, there's not a whole lot of airflow, but you do want to optimize it however you can. And now, when you're pulling the CPU fan out, watch because the front panel connectors are right here, and it's not the easiest thing to squeeze between the case and the front panel connectors without bending those front panel connectors. So you might have to go underneath the power supply wires or something like that in order to get this thing out. Keep all our screws together. Forget what I had to do. Yeah, I kind of had to slide it along the side here just to get it clear these wires. Just pull our 3-pin wire through. Now this Noctua I got, again, I recommend probably the fractals. I don't have the fractal 40 yet, but the fractals are a little bit cheaper, and if we can use fractals on both, I just prefer to have the same on both, but I think the fractal is quieter. So this little Noctua, however, is what I'm going to use because it's handy. And since the wire's not as long, we're going to have to plug it into where the CPU fan was. But honestly, it doesn't matter because we're going to run them both at full speed anyway. So this guy we can just slot in, grab our 4 screws. And you probably should put your knife away first. And then we're going to do diagonal so that it lines up nicely. Again, this exhaust is a 40 mil, and the PSU fan is quiet, extremely quiet, so you don't need to replace that, thankfully. Replacing PSU fans is always kind of a pain because usually they use a 2-pin connector, and you don't really want to open a PSU and touch something by accident. It's not a good time. So thankfully we don't have to replace that. Got our little baby exhaust fan installed now. And I'm just going to run the wire sort of. I might need an extension. I'll grab the extension later. I could run it. I could run the wire. No, actually I don't need the extension, I don't think. Due to the way the PCI Express, oh, that's real close. So the way the riser card mounts, it doesn't have anything that locks into it, so it'll just be close, but it should work fine. So it leaves us with the CPU fan. And now this one's a little bit different because these screws, make sure you don't unscrew the heatsink, you want to unscrew the fan itself. These screws are screwed into the heatsink itself. So you kind of have to hold the fan frame down and screw these screws out until they pop through the fan frame. Because we need to reuse these screws. Otherwise they're going to get stuck in the fan frame. And that one did. This one probably will too. Sorry, it's not the easiest thing to see what I'm doing on this, I know. But it's weird, these screw right into the heatsink. Mm. Wish I had a tool or something to get these screws out. Might need to push them through somehow. I guess, but for the sake of demonstration, we'll just use the two that we have. It's not that big of a deal. Not gonna make this video forever, so figure out the fan screws as best you can. Fractal. These things are a pain in the ass last time. Of course, they're even more of a pain in the ass on video, but it is what it is. I'll figure it out off camera and fix it. There's one. Really only need two. It's not gonna go anywhere. It's not gonna vibrate or anything. It's just a 50 mil. Thankfully, these don't screw down as far. I don't need to. I mean, look how solid that thing is. Not going anywhere. So, that's that for now. Route the wire wherever you can. So, something to note. Wire's gonna be a pain. Something to note. This mSATA drive. Grab our mSATA drive. This is a TC Sunbow 60 gig. You can use 30, 60, 120, 240, 512, whatever size. I think the largest mSATA is like a 1 terabyte. I think that's a Samsung Evo or something. Probably this will not work out of the box. What you need to do is change a jumper that changes the voltage for the mSATA. The other thing about the mSATA, it comes with 2 screws, which is great, but this, for whatever reason, only has one standoff for the mSATA. It's down there, so you only use 1 screw with this guy. But here's your mSATA connector right here. Didn't get in there real close. There's a big 4 set of black jumpers right here. It's one piece. And we need to change that jumper over one setting. There's only 2 ways it can be on. And right now it's on 1 and 2. It's JP6. JP6 needs to be from 1 and 2 to 2 and 3. Otherwise, it's just not going to detect your mSATA SSD. Kind of a pain, again, to get off, but so I've never seen a jumper like this. I've seen doubles, I've seen only a handful of triples, but never a quad. So here's your like little quad. Hopefully this can focus. Quad jumper thing. And like I said, it needs to be on 2 and 3. So we'll move that over. Here's your mSATA SSD. And you want to not drop it. You want to look for the keying. There's a short side and a long side. Short side. It looks like it mounts upside down. It basically does. Just make sure it goes in all the way. It's going to kind of stick up at a 45-degree angle until you screw it in. Take your Phillips head. Screw that guy down. So that's that. And then we're going to do our RAM. So I've got two 2 gig sticks of DDR3 SODIMM here. Just something cheap. I think these were $5 for 4 gig or something like that. Should be enough to get Ubuntu running or whatever we want. So just pull your RAM tabs open. Now, SODIMM slots like this are a little bit more delicate than what your normal DDR3 desktop slots are. So just be careful. Again, there's a short side and a long side and a key in the middle. Just make sure you line that up. And push gently straight down. And you'll see the tabs click into the sides of the RAM. phone's dying again. Do the same thing with the other one. That's our RAM. Now, to get the hard drive screws in, we're going to have to remove the riser. So it's easiest to do that now. You can do it while it's inside the case if you want, but and it looks like there's actually there's almost two positions where this thing can be mounted, but um, it actually only fits in one, so. Drive just sits in like that. Grab our accessory screws. And these are the screws you want. The other really nice thing about this board is that the full manual is available online. And it's a very, very detailed manual. So anything you want to know about it, you can most likely get through the manual. This one's not capturing. Let's see why. Oh, bad screw or something? I think the hard drive's stripped, so we're gonna leave the screw out. This is a really old hard drive. This hard drive's been through many builds. Let's put our riser back on, actually. Despite this case's small size, it's very, very easy to work with. It's pretty clear where everything goes, how everything's set up. Normally ITX cases are a little bit hard to work with. And I think part of that is because the power supply is already installed and the wires already managed, like the front panel's already connected, things like that. So we're going to take our riser with the hard drive, make sure that slots in, and you want to tuck this side in first before putting the riser all the way in. And you will have to mount this side first. You're going to have to pull up the hard drive a little bit to get it to screw in. grab our extension. Grab these two long screws. Now that's done, we can finally take our SATA power. Do your best again not to bend the front panel wires. You know, it would be a lot better if they made this so that the hard drive mounted upside down, because then the connectors would be at the top, but unfortunately there's no way to do that. Alright, there's the one. Just need to finagle our SATA cable somehow. Might have to pull a little extra length. Do a little bit of pre-bending here. Can't tell if that's quite in all the way yet. This hard drive is nothing but a pain. Really. There it goes. That's the click I wanted to hear. Okay. Just tuck our other SATA wire underneath there somewhere. And we're going to do a fan clearance check. Make sure that there's no wires touching this fan down there. Make sure both our fans are still plugged in. Touching this fan here. And we've got our voltage change for our mSATA. Got our hard drive plugged in, got our RAM. That's pretty much it. As far as what I wanted to do with this guy, I think I'm just gonna put this 8400 GS in there because I'll use it on the TV and I need HDMI for that. So we'll do that. The other thing I didn't show you in the other video, I do have a 1060 mini here. It's not really that mini, it's just the regular 1060. This is 1063 gig. Um, this does fit, kind of. Uh, and what I mean by kind of is that you would have to remove the double height bracket here, and obviously it's going to stick out the top of the case. But lengthwise, it does fit. So if you want to use 1060 or another size card, you may have to do a little bit of modification here on the back of the case or remove this bracket, something like that. And you want to make sure that it has support because it is a little bit heavier of a card. And the cool thing that you can do, I mean, since it's not CPU and this case is not going to use a whole lot of power, grab one of these SATA to PCI Express 6 pin, and that should be enough to power this card. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with this board. It's going to be a modder's paradise. I'm sure there's going to be all kinds of 3D printed things. We've already been talking about doing a 3D printed lid for this, and maybe the lid's just enough to cover the sides here, and it has like the cable coming out, and the side over here is covered, something like that. The other thing you could do is potentially get your own riser, and maybe do a riser from here up over the hard drive, and then have this kind of sit like that, and then put a lid over just this section. But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of cool things that we could do with this, and interested to see what you guys come up with. But I think that's pretty much it for now, for this guy, and anything that you need to know to get this up and running. Again, this is not going to be my last video on this. We're going to do some software and some fun stuff with it, but this should be more than enough to get you started, and I'll see you guys in the next video.